I disagree in part with him because Carlos and Helio Gracie are so much about the philosophy. Honestly, Rodrigo, I had no idea what to expect in Canada. What were Canadian people? I wanted to do jiu-jitsu. I didn't want to have a conditioning gym. Okay, man, this gym, like, you need to leave now because both of us cannot survive.
Welcome to X3 Podcast, your destination for business people and sports. Before we start our new episode today and looking great with a great person, and I'm going to introduce in a few minutes. Before we start with him, follow us on the social media, and please and comment as well. Let us know what you're thinking about, if you like, didn't like, what you should be get into. So we needed that interaction to make our podcast X3 better. So today, I have this person. He's a great athlete. He's a successful businessman. Have a business in Brazil, in US, in Canada. He has a degree in theology. So today we're going to be not talking about people, business, and sport, but also God. And as a friend of mine, it's a person who I admire a lot, and I believe you have tons to share with us. I believe this is going to be a very special episode, so stay with us. And I'm talking about Giacomo Zanini. Man, what a pleasure to have you on the X3, Giacomo.
It's my pleasure, Rodrigo. Thanks for inviting me. Thanks for the nice words.
Great, man. Let's start with your name, because I don't know many people. I think you're the only one I know with the name of Giacomo. What's the idea for your parents? What happened?
Yeah, so the name Giacomo, it has its origins in Italy. It's an Italian name, and my family has this Italian background. And my grandfather, his grandfather, so my great-grandfather was called Giacomo. He was the one that came, that actually went from Italy to Brazil, and then Giacomo Zanini had Antonio Giacomo, his son, and then Antonio Giacomo had my grandfather, Flavio. And then from there, it kind of circled back around where Giacomo had my son, my oldest son is Antonio, his name. So we just kept the tradition in the family.
Okay, so you're thinking about having more kids and maybe have Giacomo Jr.?
I already have 2 kids, right? Antonio 10 and Killian is 5. Yeah, they're great kids, healthy kids, love jiu-jitsu. And I think we stopped for that. Number 2 is good for now.
Yeah, let's start with your kid. And also, Professor Giacomo is married for black belts as well. Professor Rafaela, how she's doing?
Rafaela is recently got promoted to black belt. She's heading the marketing and most of the operations in our gyms in Brazil. So thanks to her, I'm able to travel and compete and do all kind of stuff that's related to jiu-jitsu, not related to the school itself. So yeah, I'm so thankful to have her in my life because she runs everything.
Giacomo, we were talking about your kids. I have 2 boys, and they're born in Canada, right? And now you move back to Brazil. But comparing the time, you're raised in Brazil, right? In south of Brazil, right? So your childhood is in south of Brazil. You look back in the way you live your childhood, and today your kids are Canadian and Brazilian, Canadian-Brazilian, and live in Brazil. What's the difference? For the Giacomo who was a kid, for your kids who are Canadian, was raised in here and moved back to Brazil?
Well, I find that traveling and experiencing different culture only helps you to grow and helps you to see your limitation, accept other people's culture, and you start to set those boundaries where you understand that the world is not only your culture and what you believe. So it makes you more flexible and understand better people. So yeah, growing up in Brazil, I lived there from, same small town. It's a coastal town in south of Brazil, very small town where basically, you live with your family and you know everyone everywhere you go. So it's a pretty chill. It's a really good way of life when you're a child. But as you grow up and you need to explore, you need to find work, and it becomes a little bit tough. But when I was 17, I actually moved to California to pursue Jiu-Jitsu and college. So I convinced my parents to go to California as long as I learned English. So I wanted the real reason was Jiu-Jitsu, because 2007 there was that boom of Jiu-Jitsu in California, World Championship moved there. So that was the reason that I went there. But I ended up coming to Canada, and that's where my kids were born. And then again, my kids were basically raised into Canadian fashion, right? Like we really took in the culture, and they live like basically like Canadians. And now going back to Brazil, I feel that they have a culture shock in Brazil, and it's the same that I had moving to Canada. But once you go through those first adaptations, I think it's only good for a person to experience different cultures.
So you mentioned about Jiu-Jitsu, right? Moving to US at 17 years old. I have a picture of you here, a little chubby version of Giacomo here with white belt. How old are you in this picture here, Giacomo?
I was 11.
11. That's when you started Jiu-Jitsu?
Yeah, it was 1999 when the first Jiu-Jitsu instructor came to my town. He was a blue belt, 3 stripes. And I was doing karate at the time.
Everyone did some of karate back then.
Yeah,
right?
oh man, I loved karate. I was a yellow belt, and we did the Shotokan style with all the katas and all that. But then karate had a summer break. And then my brother started, taking up Jiu-Jitsu at the time, and he said, hey, you have to come try it out, and just for the summertime. So since karate had stopped during the summertime, I went to take a few classes. And then, yeah, it was love at first sight. I was really attracted to the idea of the samurai culture in martial arts. My first instructor, he was very passionate about that kind of idea. And I was young. I watched cartoons and animes, and I was about fighting. So the first thing that caught me was that loyalty, samurai, discipline, the values. I was like, oh, this is so cool. Like, I want to be part of it. But it was only at 15 that sports jiu-jitsu started to become more serious in my life. And as you can see there in the picture, I was like overweight and chubby, low self-esteem child. And my brother was the competitor one. He was the cool guy. He raced motorcycles, and he was good in everything he did.
You look up to your brother a lot.
I did. And, I have this funny story, like I can tell after, but like my brother...
But still now.
No, because I medaled at the World Championship, the blue belt juvenile, and that was what, switched my mentality to like, okay, I want to do jiu-jitsu for my life. And then my brother came to the gym, like he wasn't training, he tapped me. And he started bullying me, saying that like he was the world champion. Man, I almost cried that day because I was so dedicated. But there's that brother, siblings kind of,
tough love.
Tough love. So, yeah. And then he ended up like quitting jiu-jitsu after and all that. And I kept going. But yeah, he was the one that kind of got me into it. And then jiu-jitsu really gave me that self-esteem as a child, growing up, and something, just a mission, something to look for.
That's great. Giacomo, let's go back for you, 17 years old, moving by yourself to US, and that, because I believe you are living in your mom's and dad's house, being taken care of as the Brazilian family used to do, being spoiled, your mom cooking and all that. And then you move by yourself to start your journey as an immigrant in US. Tell a little bit about that. Because you're young, 17 years old.
Yeah, I had just finished high school. And in Brazil, at the time, you finish high school when you're around 17, turning 18. And then I was, at the time, 100% dedicated to jiu-jitsu. I had already competed at Worlds twice. My life surrounded all about training jiu-jitsu and going to school just to make the grades to be able to train. And then I went to compete Pan Ams. That was like April or March of 2007. And the World Championship was being held up to then in Brazil. So I went to Pan Ams as like a graduation experience. So I was like, okay, I graduated in high school. I went with my instructor. We competed at Pan Am's. We did a 1 month of vacation in California, and I went back to Brazil. So arriving back in Brazil, they announced the World Championship is now in California. So I went crazy. I'm like, oh my goodness, I have to compete at Worlds. Like, there's no question about it, because that was just my thing now. And but now I'm back in Brazil. So my parents are like, okay, we don't have money to send you again to California. So I was so disappointed and frustrated, because then I would have gone to Pan Am's and I would waited a couple months to then do Worlds, because that was kind of my goal. So what happens is I did everything I could. I asked for people. I asked my grandparents. So I ended up getting the money to go back to the United States. And then at the first time I went with my instructor. So the second time I went kind of by myself. A friend picked me up at the airport. And then I had a 6 months visa, and I didn't know what to expect. I just had that dream of competing at the World Championship, becoming a black belt, and make a living out of jiu-jitsu. Like, I didn't know how that was possible. I understood that there was a sequence where I had to get my black belt, and in my head, I had to compete the World Championship, otherwise you wouldn't get a belt. And that's what kind of pushed me to stay there. But, at 17, was very difficult being in California. Like you said, I went from living with my parents, having all the support there, to now I'm all by myself. Yeah, I went through many situations there that I'm thankful for now. But yeah, it was tough times.
I bet.
17 years old, dude.
So
small town.
So you're 17 years old. You knew you want to be a instructor, jiu-jitsu instructor. That's what we want to do for life.
Yeah.
And explain to me, because people at home, like if you're not from Brazil, when you were 17 years old, the jiu-jitsu in Brazil is impossible. You have a living out of jiu-jitsu. Right, we know that. Now it's totally possible. It's got popular, they're working the right way. It's become a business. You can have a good life teaching jiu-jitsu, being a professor in Brazil. But back in the time, when you were 17, that's not the reality. So how are you inside that reality in Brazil? The sport was very amateur, right? And you looked at that and said, that's how I want to do it. That was one of the reasons you decided to go to US?
Okay, there's something interesting to it, because so my very first jiu-jitsu instructor, after a while he left, and then he arranged so one of his students kept running the gym, and that instructor was the one that got me into the sports jiu-jitsu, and he was my role model. And then I looked at his lifestyle, and it was just so nice. He traveled internationally once a year. And he was always going to Rio de Janeiro for competitions. And he drove a nice car. He had a nice gym. But I didn't understand at the time that he didn't have that from jiu-jitsu.
Okay.
Yeah, he had that from his family. But I didn't understand. I thought that was the lifestyle.
I want that.
Yeah, I want that. And it took me, after I became friends with him, I hang out more with him, I started to understand. But I still understood that it was possible somehow. But there's one thing too, that before I came to the United States, my idea of living out of jiu-jitsu was to kind of have your dojo and then live inside of the dojo like
a samurai.
Like a samurai, right? Because my very first instructor did that. He lived in the dojo, and for me it was almost like a religion, kind of lifestyle philosophy. It wasn't just fighting. So you had to embrace the toughness of, if you want to do this, you have to live in the gym, and you have to eat, sleep in the gym, and it's not about money, it's about, other things, but not really. I didn't actually think deep enough how I would make a career of it. I was, kind of
going with the flow.
Going with the flow, yeah. And so once I went to California, then everything changed, because you start to see a business operation behind these gyms and how professional people not only actually trained, the way how they trained, It was very different than how people trained in Brazil. But there it started to click on me that there was more to it.
There's more to it.
Yeah, but I was still young, so the first thing that it seemed to me that I had to do is to learn English. So my first goal was to go to English school. So my time was split between studying English and training Jiu-Jitsu. But for the first 6 months, my parents helped me out. They sent me money here and there. At the time, was not that hard with the currency exchange, so it was a little bit easier. And they also thought it was like a short-term thing. But then after that, it became that I had to start working, and I had to go to school to keep my visa and train. So then there was a different phase of my life in California where Jiu-Jitsu wasn't 100% of my thing. And at one point there, I even decided like, oh, maybe like I'm not going to do Jiu-Jitsu for a living, right? I'm going to find other things to do because it's just too hard. And yeah, there was a time, like a gray area in my time where I trained only twice a week. Jiu-Jitsu, and then I did weight training, went full-time to college, and worked at a farmer's market. Okay. Yeah. So that's how we went for like a couple of years in California.
So before we get into business, because you mentioned business, I want to talk about that because one of our pillars of our podcast. But you mentioned something very interesting about the values of that's what's kept you, right? That's what got your attention about the values of martial arts. And it's nice to see how much you incorporate that in yourself, because then when you want to have your school, you want to live inside your gym. So you're really serious about to live the core values of the martial arts, right? Do you think like you today as a professor today, and you have many students you're teaching, and you look into the martial arts today, with the MMA came in, was a mixed martial arts, but one thing I really believe they're not mixing. It would be beautiful to see is the value of all the martial arts being mixed on MMA as well. And because the business, they put the values to the side. So now with the eyes of a professor with that background to appreciate the values, how you see the sport today?
That's a great question, Rodrigo. It's also a complex question because going to theology school and giving lots of focus on sports sociology, I began to see things that before I didn't see. Like, for example, one of the things that I am able to separate now is that Jiu-Jitsu as a sport, it's a combination of mechanics, of biomechanics, and then you ought to have a philosophy to run those mechanics. So think about in terms of software and hardware. The hardware is the actual computer. It's the techniques, the operations. But those operations, those techniques don't create by itself a philosophy for them to run themselves. So you need to pick up some kind of philosophy to run this hardware, like a software that will run the hardware. And we think as it comes as a default, the samurai style of philosophy, but also looking into a little bit more the samurai philosophy, you see the samurais were not all love and loyalty. Yeah. There were people, very individualistic people, and that, you look more into samurais, you see there's a lot of things that we wouldn't like, you wouldn't see as something that we think as a martial arts value. But this romantic idea of the samurai came as a default. And then in North America, the default philosophy is utilitarianism, where it's using martial arts as a means to an end. But people don't see that. They think now, this is, you even see John Danaher talks a lot about that, how the main difference between the old style to the Gracie style is pragmatism, is how the Gracies took away the whole romanticism of samurais. But I mean, there's so much to talk about this because I disagree in part with him, because Carlos and Helio Gracie were so much about the philosophy. So what I can say in terms of how I see the sport today is I see the sport cannot create values from the mechanics itself. You need to get this philosophy somewhere else to then run the mechanics.
The
Because the arm bar that Gordon Ryan uses to defeat his opponent is the same arm bar that you teach a woman for self-defense. But the mentality behind that is different, right? Like in North America, they're talking so much about making money. What's important is to make money. And they think that's a philosophy in itself, right? It's a philosophy in itself. So they want to say like, oh, this is the way how you see it, but they don't see there's so many other ways to run and to have a vision and to have a mission to run that which is Jiu-Jitsu itself, right?
That's great. It's nice to get deep in that subject because a lot of people out there want to see you a great athlete as well, and they see a fighter, a great athlete. They sometimes think we are all about that, right? And then you have a degree in theology, and put it that the way you see things, and that definitely you bring that to your life in many areas as well, right? So it's great. Thank you for sharing that, and definitely when I look to our sport, especially martial arts, and as a total, I see that lack we have with distancing for the values, and you're right about the samurai. I think that romantic, image we have the samurais. It was more made about the movies, Hollywood, right? The show in one way, but when you go study, you see, ugly side of it as well. Right? But it's no worse because you're human beings, right? But it's nice, Giacomo, you mentioned about that, man, and a good insight about that, how you should look into it.
Yeah, because in sociology, people talk in terms of meta-narratives. Meta-narratives is many different beliefs that you put together to run your life, right? So different beliefs about life and about people and about work. So this meta-narrative, you can see so many of them.
Yeah.
Even in MMA, you see there's this Christian kind of trend, and then you have this making my own legacy kind of trend, and making the money or so you can still see. I don't think there's a standard a standard philosophy. I think you have to pull the philosophy somewhere to run.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll be back to the theology. Actually, I want to finish this podcast talking about that, but I want to talk now about business. And I found out something. I heard you start your business. And do you have any business background before, like your family in Brazil? Did you have that contact with business?
Yeah, the two sides of
before
my
leaving
family.
to US.
Yeah, I have my family, my dad's part of the family. They were not into the business side. They all went to universities, did executive type of careers. And my grandfather was actually graduated in theology. He went to a seminary to become a priest, and then he quit after that and thought that it wasn't for him and became a lawyer. But in my mom's side of the family, which is the family that I was raised into, they were all business people. So I was raised with that entrepreneurship mindset built in me because that's what I saw, right? They run different sorts of business, restaurants and that kind of stuff. And so my life was basically around working for yourself and seeing my family do that.
So you're really a combination about your dad part of the family and your mom part of the family, right? Giacomo, how about this business, workout gym in US? Talk about that. I believe that was your first step into business in North America.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
So,
and why a workout gym?
Yeah. Okay. So I went to the United States to train and to become more proficient in English and just to improve myself as a person. So arriving there, I had few things I had to do, like, for example, my visa. So I went to study, and I was studying full-time, so that kept my visa going. So I was training. And then I ended up going to college because the English, after 1 year, I felt like I'm not learning as much as I want. I need to something. So I had a girlfriend at the time, and she suggested me to go to college. So I applied for a community college called Regent College in East San Diego. And then I went to study exercise science. And then at the end of my course, I had to do internship to graduate. So that's where I found this studio that was very famous at the time called MMA Conditioning. It was led by Rafael Alejara. He was mostly known for being Vanderlei Silva's main head coach, the guy that developed the snorkel.
Oh, I remember. Yeah.
Yeah, so Alejara was in Brazil at the time. I was in San Diego, and I went to do my internship there. And man, it was amazing because Alejara was training. Like I saw Lyoto Machida, popping from time to time, Demian Maia, André Galvão. Like I was looking like all these guys, Royler Gracie, like they work out at his gym. So I went there to do my internship, and he accepted me. So after like learning his style, and I graduated in exercise science with an associate's degree, they offered me to be a partner in this studio. This came because I was looking for a way to stay in the United States, and I was working outside of the industry at the time. So it's like, I just don't have the money. So I borrowed money from my family. And that was my first, entrepreneurship in Denver. I was short in money. There was no planning. I just went and bought some of the machines, and making a long story short, my visa didn't work out. So like I wasn't able to stay there, although I had made investment. Things didn't fall through. So I had to make a quick change. I was already there 3 years and a half, and my wife, Rafaela, was already there living with me at the time in California. And now for 6 months, I saw myself in a situation where the gym was kind of running, still needed some more time, the conditioning gym. I was more and more getting away from jiu-jitsu because now my thing is conditioning. I'm doing personal training and all that. But I really, deep inside, I wanted to teach jiu-jitsu. And I saw that in California, Southern California especially, it was just so difficult. There's so many world champions. There's so many good people. So I was like, what am I going to do? How am I going to make a living? So I had there a situation where the opportunity to come to Canada arose. So what happened was because that's another story how I ended up in Canada. But I sold every single machine on Craigslist. Man, that was a tough time of my life, like getting all those machines. Like there was a time where I started to put the gym down, and not very many people to help me, but I sold all the machines. I gathered all the money I could, and I came to Canada thinking, okay, this is my last chance. I need to try to make my living out
with the money you sold the machines.
I sold the machines.
Do you put in the way your first this gym, this workout gym, this exercise gym, was your first contact with business in the U.S. You put that how was a failure for you? You put it that way?
It was. If you look at failures as a way to learn, it was a good way to learn. But I knew nothing about anything what I was doing there, and I was just, I know I made investment. I was a personal trainer, so I don't even think I experienced being an entrepreneur. I was basically working for myself there, and then I had no business. How I'm gonna make? There's no project behind that business. So yeah, you could see it as a total failure in the end. But I believe that I learned a lot. I believe, that maximum that God writes right through crooked lines. So through that vision, I believe was growth for me. But at the time, it seemed like hell. It seemed like, man, what did I do? Like what I got myself into.
It's because I'm asking that because today you are successful in business, and I'm sure people looking to you and think, oh, and have that idea to be successful is something easy, or being successful is something kind of natural. It's not. It is built on failures base, pretty much, right? You have to fail a lot, you have to learn a lot, you have to work a lot yourself to build up for who you are today. So that's the reason I made that question, because definitely you learn a lot from that situation, right?
Yeah, this situation, it really toughened me up, the resilience. I think that's when I started to become a man, where I saw myself in a terrible situation and nobody was there to help me. And I had to, some of the friends I thought that were my friends, all of a sudden I start to see they're like, well, this is something else. And I think that gave me great maturity to keep moving. But I think it was really about courage, because, man, when you're 17, 18, and I think my family was they were a little bit crazy too, like to lend me the money and all that. But it ended up being good because I used some part of that money to establish myself in Canada later. But yeah, it was not easy. I made lots of mistakes. I don't even call them mistakes, Rodrigo, because, man, I didn't know what I was doing. There was no business plan. I established a limited liability company, and I got insurance. And I was there, right? Like I was
learn on the fly.
As I'm going, and then it needed a little bit more time, but honestly, it was lacking passion, because I wanted to do jiu-jitsu. I didn't want to have a conditioning gym. But yeah.
Like nowadays, when you look to especially social media, right? Like many people talking about business, many people talk about being successful, and they pass on, especially to these new generations coming up, it's something easy. And it's not even that. The people doesn't talk about the failures you have, the setbacks, the hard times. Nobody's talking about that. And then it sells this image of something to be successful is something cool. It is cool, but the journey to be successful, man, is a big mountain to climb.
Usually, the stories are told by the successful people. Oh, I struggled, and then in the end, it worked out.
Yeah.
But how many people struggled and it didn't work out?
Yeah.
Right. So I feel also sometimes there are many things that have to come into place for the magic to happen. Sometimes you're not ready. Sometimes the opportunity is there, you don't see it. Sometimes the opportunity, you grab it, but you're not ready. And sometimes timing, I believe, is one of the most important things, alongside being humble for learning. And,
so that's the two big things you think: time, be patient.
The timing to be patient and
be humble.
And be humble, because humble, it comes with like the resilience, the never giving up. It's an act of being humble, of knowing, okay, I'm not good there, I'm not there yet, but I have to learn. It's a learning process every day, and if you're not open for learning, then it's impossible to move.
It's impossible to move forward.
But this is the thing. Like, I'm 34 years old now. It feels like the from 20 to 30, it was only mistakes and fail. And now I still make mistakes and I still try to learn as much as possible, but at least after so many mistakes, and even mistakes that people say this is not going to work, and you have to try for yourself and see like, yeah, this is not going to work. I had to take a step back. And now after all this, I guess 14 years of attempting to make a living out of jiu-jitsu, gave me the maturity to start to walk on the right path. Now I have to continue to walk on this path. But if I start to tell, like, besides the failure I had there in California, I had failures here in Canada as well. And there was times where, yeah.
So you moved for Cali to Canada, to Vancouver.
So, yeah, how I moved here.
And then you opened a school. You left with that mentality. I go to Canada and open my school.
I came to Canada thinking in terms of, actually, this is how we actually came to.
And you were in San Diego. Why north? Why you go to the cold?
Yeah, that's
like a Brazilian. You're in San Diego. You're great. Why went north?
This is one of those things, man, in life that it's hard to explain. We're in San Diego. Our visas were about to expire. Like I said, I bought into the business to try to fix my visa situation because my student visa, I graduated, it was ending. I had to either go back to school or I had to make a decision how I'm going to stay in the United States. And now I had my wife with me. Which I invited to come with me. We married in Brazil, invited her to come with me to California. So I have the responsibility of like, okay, I have her now and I cannot disappoint her. So I had the gym in San Diego. We had to make a decision. So we wanted to try to stay in the United States. So we decided to go back to school and keep schooling going. That way we had the visas and we could keep working there. So we had to go abroad in the United States to apply for the visa. One of the two options was at Mexico or Canada, or actually go back to Brazil. But then we said, you know what, I think Canada seems like a cool place to visit. We know a couple of people there. And we came to Vancouver to get our visas renewed to the United States. And something happened that day that the visas got denied. So I was at Canada Place having a Starbucks when I see my wife coming from the consulate, the American consulate. She was crying.
Oh.
I'm like...
You knew it.
I knew it right there. Like she had her visa denied. And then she came in and she was like, oh my goodness, we're going to have to go back to Brazil. I don't know. I told them everything that I wanted to study there. And they said this wasn't going to be the time. So, man, I'm here now. Like, what do? Do I break up with her, send her back to Brazil? Or, because, you know, I had like everything in California. Like, I had my life there. We're
going to cut this part of the podcast so you don't get in trouble and get back home.
But this is something we laugh and we talk about. I was like, what are my options? And then I tried to like calm down, and then we took a walk on the Canada Place, and then it was a beautiful day. The mountains were full of snow. It was a clear sky day, and overlooking the mountains. I said, you know what, Rafaela, why don't we try to come here and just like and give it a try, like it? Because one thing that always moved me was because Jiu-Jitsu changed my life. I wanted to take Jiu-Jitsu to places where Jiu-Jitsu wasn't popular to show people the power of Jiu-Jitsu. So now we talk about Jiu-Jitsu for everyone, and there's Jiu-Jitsu everywhere.
Yeah.
But 15 years ago, there wasn't Jiu-Jitsu everywhere.
No.
So I was looking for a place where there wasn't Jiu-Jitsu. So I said, you know, in Canada here, it doesn't seem like Jiu-Jitsu is as popular as in Southern California, so I might have a better chance of surviving here. And she's like, yeah, okay, whatever you say, and this and that. So
the immigration in Canada also is easier, right?
It is, because if you have the qualifications, it's a lot easier. If you're in the United States and you have the qualification, it's still difficult.
Still difficult, yeah.
So what happened was basically, she stayed in Vancouver because she couldn't go back to the States.
Yeah.
And then I went back to the States.
Pack it up,
give a 30 days notice on my apartment, sell the machines on Craigslist. This is all within 30 days. And Rafaela stayed here. So I did all that, collected everything I could there, and it came with all my luggage, came with everything in Canada. They even look at me like, man, what are there's all this luggage and everything. And I had to explain to them, hey, I lived in the United States for 3 years. I'm going to be here for like a month to see how things work out. If not, I'm going back to Brazil. But man, as soon as we came to Canada, basically I went to look for a lawyer to see how I would be able to stay here. So make a long story short, my wife went to university, and that gave me a work visa to work in Canada. So I started to look for places to teach, and the very first steps were like this. One gym had been looking for a jiu-jitsu instructor for many years. So they could prove to immigration
They're looking for instructors.
looking for instructors. And now at this point, I also had a work permit. So it was an easy go.
Perfect.
I had the work permit. They
were looking for
instructor. I started working for them, and then they applied for my permanent residency in 6 months.
Great.
Everything came through, and then I had our permanent residency. So everything that we're trying to do in the United States for 3 years happened in 6 months here.
6 months.
So now I have, because you're worried about getting injured. So now I have a health insurance. Now I don't have to worry about visa and staying illegal. I'm paying taxes. So now I'm like, okay, everything is in place for me just to work and make this happen. But I was an employee of this gym. So what I did was I took part of my salary, and then I went for a place 20 kilometers away from this gym, and I rent a spot. So I would work and
part-time teaching, part-time work on your own business.
So this was like I didn't have a day off. Right, so the days I taught in one places, then the other place I taught
20 clicks apart.
So then
it's a big commitment.
Yeah, it was. I remember at one point I wanted to open up more classes, so I used to teach no-gi in one of these gyms, hop in the car with my rash guard, sweaty, and drive to the other place.
Be in time.
Come there to be there and teach the second class right after. So yeah, I was just a one-man guy running everything. Shortly after we moved here, my wife also got pregnant of our
Antonio,
child,
right?
Antonio. So she was, just taking care of that, and I was just running everything for a little while. Yeah, that's how my start was in Canada. So making salary as an employee, and then taking like a third of the salary and paying. But there's one thing interesting. I was so out of the loop with how to do things that I opened up adult class at 3 p.m. in Coquitlam. Like, who would attend
3 p.m.?
At 3 p.m.? So I didn't even know until what time people worked, how that works. So I paid 2 months of rent.
Nobody showed up. So learn process, right? You just learn the people work 9 to 5.
And that's how I started teaching jiu-jitsu to my wife.
You mentioned about Vancouver, right, in U.S. I also started my life in North America and U.S. I have a lot to thank you, that blessed land. But, man, Canada, it's something, and I was joking, why you in San Diego? We came up north, it's cold. It is cold, but also Vancouver is a beautiful city. What a beautiful city, and a great quality of life, and I just want to make that point because we're talking about how good is this country, right, Canada? I'm very happy to be a Canadian, and probably you as well, and have our kids being a Canadian. If you are right now at home thinking about to move somewhere, look in Canada, okay?
Yeah, Canada was a good surprise for me because honestly, Rodrigo, I had no idea what to expect in Canada. What were Canadian people? My first impression was that Canadians were like Swedish people. Was just blonde people in the snow. I had no idea. I thought it was kind of a Scandinavian kind of country. But then it's a multicultural country, so that was my first shock. And then because Americans, they accept other cultures and stuff, but you have to become more like them. And in Canada, I felt because there's so many ethnicities and so many cultures, you are more welcome, more easier. And then I made friends very quickly. Right away. People, came to me and they took me in, and it felt like home. And it felt like, wow, the United States it was something that I loved and that I missed because it felt like that was the place to be. But man, Canada made me forget about the United States very quickly. Yeah, I was.
You know what's funny, Giacomo? Like for you Canadians and Americans, for the Central American, South America, when they talking about to move, they talk only about U.S.
Yeah.
Oh, I want to go to U.S. I want to go to U.S. And I don't know why nobody's talking about Canada. You know, I don't know if it's because of the weather.
It's a lack of information, because I didn't know anything about Canada when I first came, and then I had to learn about like the lifestyle here. And I when you're welcomed and you feel good, it's so easy to adapt. So every time we faced the weather, I believe is the hardest thing to adapt. And my wife was a surfer, was someone who loved to be in the beach and in the hot, warm weather. So she was the one that at first had more time adapting. But because we had so many friends and because things worked out so well, it was easy to make that transition.
So, come to Canada. Giacomo, you started your gym and then you made the transition, stop work, some point to stop working and invest yourself in your gym. And that's, I met you was around that time when you were teaching, right? And opening your school, I believe. And how was that experience? You have your school, so you have this business you are running in US, and then you have to move to Canada, start living off jiu-jitsu, start teaching, like, fulfilling your dream. How was your mind? How was Giacomo? How was you looking to the future teaching? What stage you were in your life at that time?
Yeah, so first, when I first came to Canada, one thing in my mind was, if I'm not able to teach jiu-jitsu for a living, I'm not staying in Canada. Because in the United States, I would fill in classes here and there as a purple belt, but never taught jiu-jitsu for a living there. So when I came to Canada, I said, okay, I'm going to Canada with the goal of doing jiu-jitsu full-time. So I sent over 50 emails to try to get people to hire me. And only 2 schools answered and replied. One is the one that hired me, and the other one didn't want to hire me, but they offered me to sublease their gym.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, so that's then how I was saying like how I basically started. But then I was a brown belt, and my mind wasn't in the business side of things yet. I was a brown belt, and I was still pursuing my black belt. And back in the day, my understanding is that I had to be a champion to become a black belt. So I would not move, even in my association, there wasn't a curriculum where if you did this and this and this and this, you would get a black belt. So the black belt was subjective as how you'd get a black belt. So for me, it was like, I need to compete, I need to be active, I need to be traveling, my school worked as a platform for me to be able to compete. And whatever money that came was just reinvested in myself, in competitions, and not in marketing.
So that time you were more focused on competition.
More focused on building myself for the first years.
You have that connection to become a successful as a jiu-jitsu business, in the business of jiu-jitsu. You should be a champion as well. You have that connection, right? That's a big mistake a lot of people
But it was something interesting, Rodrigo, because this school that hired me, it was a school with 800 students, karate school mainly, 3 stories gym, amazing gym, where they had a full-on business operation with like 10, 15 employees, and it was a business operation with martial arts. So when they hired me, and I came there, and there's a lot of things like people are following up, and they're doing events, and they're doing attendance and all this, and I'm like, this is not real martial arts. martial arts is like, it's about being tough and it's about training really hard. And everything they told me I had to do, I didn't do. So I was completely disconnected from the idea of business. I didn't, for me, the gym was still, the students were like my training partners. So
to improve yourself.
I went there to train with my students and to get ready. Not at all. I don't quite remember where I made the switch, but after then, eventually I got my black belt. I qualified for Worlds, and then I got my black belt. This was like 3 years after I already had my gym running. And then at one point there, I noticed that business started to become something more frequent. Like, okay, how can I grow and how can I, improve my gyms as far as business go? So I would hear a lot of people that give me advice, and I would try to implement some of those things, but I wasn't consistent. Soon enough, my gym turned into a fighting club. I would try to mold it. Okay, these are the beginner classes, but soon enough, I would try.
That's what the culture you are.
Yeah, it was just so. Yeah, it was, and training was tough. So it was just difficult. It was just myself. So the first move that I made as far as business go was halfway through my black belt. I needed to qualify for the World Championship, and I was traveling a lot. My wife had a small child there, and so I needed money to run this operation. So one of my students offered to make an investment in the gym, and I didn't think twice. I sold part of the gym. It was easy cash on my pocket. That's what I needed. My wife was relocated with my kid to Brazil, so I could travel and compete. And that's when I had to learn through the tough road that those two things were conflicting. Because I traveled, I competed, and then for 1 year, and I didn't do well at the Worlds that year. It was 2017. Rafaela, my wife, got pregnant with the second child. And when we came to Canada, we're going to have the second kid. And I did Worlds 3 times. That's enough. I felt in my heart that I competed 3 times at the World Championship as a black belt. And now I can focus on running my gym. Man, my gym was devastated. There was no students. We're in debt. And I had to fire my manager that was running everything for me while I was away. And that created a huge tension in my gym. And that's where people come into, the equation, because these people that run in the gym for me while I was traveling, now all of a sudden like, oh, I don't need them anymore, because now, and that was at the time, was something that I had to do that was difficult, a decision that I had to make of like, okay, man, this gym, like, you need to leave now because both of us cannot survive. And then the investor really wanted the manager to stay in. And then basically what happened was that timing thing I was talking about. I had a gym where I was subleasing with a low cost, and then I went to a overhead that was impossible to pay with what we had. The timing was bad. We had too many people trying to make a living out of the gym. And then I saw myself in a situation where I had to start fighting over business with people that I liked a lot. And that was one of the first tough lessons. I lost many friends. I lost many students.
And I believe that was the time when I saw you very disappointed and talked about even don't teach no more.
Yes.
That
I had the support from my association. My association at the time started to dissolve almost. And then I felt like I was so alone. And then...
that was 6 years ago. How long was that?
This was 2017. Yeah. So 2015, that's when I opened this new gym with the investor. And then I was traveling. The second year was around the third. So the first year I was around. Second year I traveled. The third year, when I came back, things had already gone sideways. So,
okay, so Giacomo,
this is 2017.
Your experience in the US, you learn a lot. Oh, that was a failure. Came to Canada. Now you're going into your second failure, right? And you have all these problems around you 6 years ago. And now Giacomo is a successful, happy man. That was 6 years. And you're still in the same industry. You have your schools, you're teaching. What was the bridge for these 6 years being second failure, problems, for now very successful and a very happy place?
Yeah, so the second failure was this one, where timing was wrong, spent a lot of money, came back, had fights with my people there. And then I decided, because I still had a third failure, I'm just going to 1 second here. So what happened was the gym owed a lot of money. So I said, I'm not going to let this gym die. So I took all the debts of the gym and I bought the gym from them back, from my investor and the manager who also had a percentage. So I took up all this debt and then I started from zero. And I was able to pay off the debt. And within 2 years, pandemic came.
Oh, man.
And that was like, man, I don't have energy to do
You
this
just
again.
paid everything out.
I just paid everything
and the
out.
COVID hit.
And yeah, I still owed like some money that I was able, because I sold my gym for a second time. So during pandemic, we didn't know. So first, like I was doing well, paying my bills, getting to the 100 students mark. It was just myself and my wife. Everything seemed to be like, okay, now it's gonna take, a road where I'm gonna just keep walking this road. Pandemic hit. And then we didn't know. At the time, I was so burned out. I was like, oh, thank God, they're gonna close for 1 month. Man, we didn't know it was gonna close for 2 years. So the government, announced on Saturday that they're gonna have to shut down. I had already announced on Friday because I was feeling that was coming, and already shut down 1 day before the government actually asked. So I'm at home, like, oh, this is so good, just have some time, some break. But then the first month and second month, and I'm like, okay, I need to pay rent, and I don't have money to pay rent. So that's when another student saw my situation, and I think he also saw the opportunity, because we didn't know how long pandemic was going to take. So he purchased part of the gym with the clause that when pandemic ended, I could stay if I wanted, or I could sell the rest. And then I went to Brazil, and that was a time where I said, you know what? I think this is it for me. I don't want to do jiu-jitsu. I'm so disappointed. I'm all alone. I so much work. I see nothing back. All of this idealistic thing that I'm changing people's lives. Yeah, I'm changing people's lives. I'm destroying my life, and that's when I saw the opportunity. Not that I saw the opportunity, but now a very important person in this time was you, right? You, who was always there for me every time I needed any help.
That time, right?
I was actually alone. I was kind of independent.
Yeah.
I thought, I had the instructor that was signing the black belts for me, but I was trying to run something independently. And that's what I think was the most difficult thing, because what the bridge, now coming to your question, was that once I discussed with you what you were doing, I saw myself included in a mission, a vision.
That's nice.
And I think I'm a strong believer that the mission and the vision precedes operations. So I think going back to that vision, because what the motivation was, that, remember that samurai style, and all of a sudden that started to also break down. And I'm like, whoa, what? I have nothing here. All I have is jiu-jitsu, a gym that doesn't pay my bills, a lot of stress. I'm not healthy. Like, this is not the lifestyle I wanted. And then, and I've seen you within, Gracie Baja, and within your team and your gym always growing. And then I just saw that, and what I was actually lacking was a mission, was a vision to give back that motivation. So I made the excellent decision to then sell the rest of my gym in Canada, because the opportunity that was kind of creating in Brazil to run this kind of vision in Brazil, not that Canada, because Canada was already overwhelmed by your work. So I said, what if I go to Brazil, where this vision is not there yet? They don't have that. In Brazil, in my hometown, the jiu-jitsu gyms were still fight clubs. They didn't have
the jiu-jitsu for everyone,
and the some of the tools that we had. And I think that's when I said, okay, maybe if now I use everything that I've been making mistakes all these years, from mistakes from not
management,
not managing people correctly, not managing finances correctly, taking steps bigger than I could take, bad timing when I moved, when I had a good situation and I wanted more and I expanded and it was wrong timing. All of that culminating, okay, now I'm gonna build this gym here in Brazil, starting from scratch. I don't owe any money, and nobody knows the old Giacomo, right? Like the Giacomo, immature Giacomo, that a lot of times thought about more himself than others. So I think I came to that point where, okay, I can have a fresh start. I can be this new Giacomo, and I can organize the business from zero in a way that I know this is going to be healthy for me, and it's going to be a great product for people that want to consume it. Yeah.
What a great story, Giacomo, and I'm happy to know I was a little piece of this bridge who took you to this place you are right now. Because everyone who comes to me to ask help, even outside Gracie Baja, I always give my time. A lot of people help me, my way as well. So I give my time, and I like to see one that's brought results to people's life, and see you today, man, with your family. We're happy every time we talk, have good news, and you are back competing. You always has been a great competitor, and I know you're back. Your schools are busy. You're happy for family in Brazil. And it's bringing to me a lot of joy, man. And congratulations for the beautiful story, man.
Thank you.
How a 17-year-old boy living in your small town in Brazil came to North America and went through all that, man, to be this happy and successful guy. Great, man. But listen, we're going towards the end, but I want to finish this. Before I finish, I want to talk about your theology, right? And I want to explore a little bit more about that before you finish. So, and all your knowledge about the sport, jiu-jitsu, also people. Now, when we do business, right, you man a lot of people, and how the society, everything going through in our society nowadays, and you have this degree in theology. So, do you believe, as Nietzsche said, like, that God is dead?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts about that? Do you think that God's dead for society? It's very good before go to the sport, for society. Nietzsche was right.
Nietzsche was right. If the God that Nietzsche was talking about was this God of prosperity, is this God for some people. Nietzsche, wrote this. His philosophy, and he in a time where people believed that the universe was built with mechanics that were perfect, like physics, like Newtonian physics. So that means in a sense like if you do good, good comes back to you. And prosperity was also associated with God's blessing. So what Nietzsche was criticizing there was more like this God that does everything correct for peoples in the world. And if you look at the world, you look at people, you see a lot of failure, you see a lot of destruction. So what Nietzsche was kind of saying there at that point was that this God that people worshiping was dead, in a sense of metaphysical sense, that is a little bit complex, because the God of the Bible is not an idea. He's the creator of necessity of ideas. And what Nietzsche there is saying, in a sense, what Nietzsche says, that if God is dead, there's no right or wrong, there's no left or right, there's no up and down. What he's saying is, yes, he's right. If God doesn't exist, then there's no metaphysics. There's no sense of justice. There's no sense of love. Everything can be reduced to particles and movements in the universe.
So you think because our Western society was built on Christianity, right? If you take that off the equation, let's put it that way. If you didn't have the Christianity impact in our society, and we have no God, how you look to the society, how you think the society would be today? Would it be on the stage we are? Would be better off? Would it be better off without God, without Christianity or the religion? The society would be better off. Yeah. You as a theologist.
That's interesting, Rodrigo, because if you take a step back, there's a lot of presuppositions when we say, oh, would this be better? But you can only be better if there is a purpose. Something being more or better or worse than something else, it implicates that there is a purpose. And that's what Nietzsche was kind of saying, that there's no purpose, yes. So there's no right or wrong. So when we start to say, would this society be better? Then what am I comparing that to? And this is one thing that, okay, so just going back there, the society, Western society, is basically built on the Roman justice system, the logics of the Greeks, and the ethics of the Christian Judean tradition, which gave the basis. And when you study theology, there's so much talk about how human rights arise out of Christianity. Women rights also comes in England with, for example, Christians were the ones that asked for or fought for women not to be legally able to get pregnant after 14 years old, because at the time they didn't have that. Christians in industrial England, they were telling people not to use drugs, not to drink. So there's so much, even with as far as slavery, Christians also used Christianity for slavery, but the Christians reading the correct way the Bible was the ones that stopped slavery, like Wilberforce, Prime Minister of England. So there's a lot of good contributions of Judean Christian culture in Western society, but I think there is a lot of talks to say that that's not the case. The case is that if Christianity only brought bad things for us, and I think that's a complex conversation that can go on and on and on and on, but my view is that places that had the Christian Judean foundation is what actually in the beginning had a foundation for human rights, for human equality, and that's what actually the Bible says. What people maybe use the Bible to say that what they want to say, That's the problem, right? That's when you
become the problem.
Yeah, you become the problem. And now, Rodrigo, this is because now when you start to talk about interpretation in Bible, this and that, now you're talking about so many interpretations. This is Foucault and Sartre and those philosophers, they developed this philosophy where interpretation is completely subjective. So that causes so much confusion because now everyone has their own truth, and then there's a lack of communication because we cannot find a common ground to talk because there's no, it's a post-truth era. Yeah.
Do you think nowadays we need more God or less God?
Man,
what are you going through as society today?
There's a philosopher, Brazilian, Leandro Carnal.
Yeah, he's famous.
He's an atheist, but he talks more about theology than most theologians. And he's always reading the Bible. And it's cool sometimes because you learn studying theology, having a critical assessment of things that you're able to look and criticize every single idea. You're not just stuck in realism or it's like, this is right. Yeah. So I like to listen to Carnal sometimes. And he says like, in the medieval times, there was too much God. Like if you fell and hit your head on the ground, that's because God wanted. There was too much God for everything. But during World War II, there was a lack of God. Right? So, I mean, I don't want to treat God as an idea. But and if you look, even in Vancouver is such a gnostic place where you think like, oh, people don't believe in God here, but they do believe in other types of God, like God that is in nature, or a God that is dissolved, like an Epicurean style, where God maybe exists, but he doesn't care about the universe. He's far away. And he doesn't control like he created and left. Or there's a God that's embedded in nature. So much mysticism and so much towards using drug experiences as a way to connect with God. So it's everywhere. Now, which God are we talking about? And I believe the Bible calls for the one God. The God of the gods, the highest of the highest, right? So, faith is more and more particular nowadays, but I just believe that those that believe in the traditional God, that's the monotheistic God, and then you could actually include the Islamic religion, Muslims and Jews and Christians. They all come from the same Abrahamic religions, and they share their like sister religions, those three, and they believe in a sense in a monotheistic God. I think that framework for life is for me what is the truth for me at this point. Like I don't want to say that is the better one, because again, what does imply better, right? It's like because even Christianity was created, sociologically created. But I believe that one point where the Greeks believed there's a school of thought, Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, and the Stoics, that they believe in a logocentric. They believe that everything in the end went back to the one source of knowledge and logics. And I think when you have this one source of logics and knowledge, you're able to then make this move of understanding what's truth and then understanding who the other is. And when you have the truth is in you, then it's tough, because every time I find you with a different truth, we either have to fight or acknowledge that both of us are wrong. Right? So only having God as something separated from the universe, you can say that's truth. And now I can be closer or less close to the truth. But if truth is subjective, you can, again, Nietzsche, right? You cannot say you're better or you're worse, because there's no better or worse. We just come by default that the better is success, is blessings, is money. That's what we acknowledge as good. But man, in Christianity, a homeless can be more closer to the truth than a rich guy. Or in the humanistic side, and when you're a humanistic person, you say, well, I'm going to do some humanitarian work in Africa because I believe I'm in a better spot than the African. So I'm going to go there, give them money, give them food, because I'm in a better position than them, because that's humanity. Yeah. But in Christianity is counterintuitive.
Yeah.
Right? It's not a God that forces competition or forces you to believe. I believe that God in Christianity is a great chess player, that he already knows all the moves of the table, right? You're free to make whatever move you want, but there's always an answer in the end. He's going to win.
He's going to win.
No.
What a great conversation. So we started talk about sports, and it went to business, and we finished with God, with this great explanation and your point of view. Giacomo, man, it was a pleasure to have you here. As I said, it's a pleasure to see where you at in your life, and I wish you all the success. And thank you very much for believing me when I talk to you. And man, I'm very happy for you, and congratulations for successful schools in Brazil. And I hope probably maybe in a few years to have you back here again. It'll be a huge pleasure. And thank you, man, for share this knowledge, your point of view of God.
Man, thank you. Thank you, Rodrigo, for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here, participating in this new project that you have. And I know that every time you put your mind into something, you do great things. So yeah, I'm so excited to be able to participate on this interview, this podcast. And then the thing that I was just gonna finish with, because one thing is when you help someone expecting something back, and that's utilitarianism. That comes from, man, I'm going to do good because I'm going to receive something back.
Yeah.
And even this sometimes with people, this law of attraction, all you do expecting something back. And in ethics in Christianity is God gives everything. That's why it's grace. Grace means for free. Everything's already done. You don't have to do. You're zeroed from shame and from the wrong deeds of the past. You're free to do good for others, expecting nothing back because it was already done to you by God. And then one thing that when you helped me, I felt like, man, there's not much I could do for you back. And you constantly help me throughout these years. And like I was telling you even in private before, like how the feeling was there, like, what would you expect me? Like there was not much I could do back to you. And the helps that you give me, those are the really deeds of good when you do expecting back. I really don't like that. You know that idea where like you pay the coffee for the person behind you and the person behind pays for the person behind you. Yeah. Man, that makes no sense in my head, right? Because I believe that, man, when you do something, it has to be a gift. When you gift someone, if you expect a gift back, then it's not really a gift.
Yeah.
So it is not that you cannot expect something back, but you have to, it is the opportunities that may arise from that gift, right? You give it to me, and then maybe down the road one day, I may even give to someone else, but I can actually go back and do something for you, but there is not that expectation. And I believe that was very crucial for you to become who you are, because man, it is given that you multiply. So yeah, thank you so much.
That's because the God, I believe, was him who taught me that. And a lot of people look to me and see as a successful person and everything, but I look for the blessing I have in my life, and more I help people, and more I have 3 boys. I have my family; they're all healthy, and everyone is happy, and I have a good life. It's not easy, but it is a good life. So, and we see, many people around us going through hard time, tough times. I have a friend that had his kids with cancer. And when I look to my family, I see everyone's perfect and everything we're doing well. Probably that's my payback. And that's making me help even more and more people. And I do that a lot. Like every time I go to Brazil, and I never take picture of that. And I never, everyone who contacts me, and I give my time for them, because we give our time for so many things is not important, right? Like as playing video game, or talking about subject, like talking to someone with a subject is not bring anything to you, or wasting time on your phone, just going through people's life. We spend our money so many things that are not valuable, and every time I have an opportunity to spend my time with someone, I can add someone, give something to them so they can go and make their life better. For me, that's a winning. And it goes beyond the brand, the flag, the Gracie Barra. It's anyone. And I was saying, when I go to Brazil every time, man, I go the supermarket, and get the pickup truck, load off food and everything, and I go to the far away neighborhoods and give it away. Christmas time, get a truck off like a toys, and I do that. I never took one picture, because I really believe when you take the picture and post it, you're not doing for you. You're not doing for, you're doing for the others. So that's the message I want to leave you there. I'm not a role model for anything. It's just the way I live in my life. And I'm glad. Look how happy I am, to see that Giacomo is not happy, thinking about you, stop jiu-jitsu, everything. For you today, successful, if you choose schools, competing, traveling, that's fulfill my heart, man. And that's maybe it's the God. It's different. At least my God, if the need is not that. For sure. What a great conversation. This is the longest episode we have, Giacomo. It was very good. That's next 3 podcasts. And the X, Giacomo, is a destination. When I create thinking, I thought about, it's nothing related to Elon Musk, okay? It's not.
Man, I thought about that a little bit in the beginning.
No. It's not
to multiply something, or
and also the X have also that is the God as well. It was later, I think, was the Greek or something. They attribute the X as the God as well of the letters. But the X is for destination. Okay, every time you go to our place, you put an X on the map, or that's a destination where you want to be. And our 3 pillars is sport, business, and people. And you went today beyond that. You even talk about God, so maybe it can become the X4, right? I hope you enjoy. Don't forget to follow us on the social medias. Which was social medias total? Spotify, Apple Plus, and Instagram, and also the YouTube channel. And don't forget also to put in comments. Now, as you're watching, go there, put in comments so we can interact, I can talk to you, and give an ideas, so we can make better this show for you. X3, your destination for business, people, and sport. I hope you enjoy, and I hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.